going and your coming. May that same guardian angel who watched over Alan as he entered into this world be with Alan as he transitions to the next. Shalom alot, Esa'ena el Herim, Me'ayin yavo Ezri, Ezri me'im Adonai, Osei shamayim va'aretz, Ayitein lamot v'aglecha, Ayanum shomrecha, Inne lo yanum v'lo yishan, Shomei Yisrael, Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha ayad yeminecha, Yomam hashemesh lo yakecha, Ve'areach b'layla, Adonai yishmocha mikora, Yishmo et nafshecha, Adonai yishmo et tzedakah uvuecha, Mi'ata v'yad olam. I'd like to invite David and Richard to share their words. Whoever wants to speak first.
Totally open. Mine's probably too long. So I did want to share just a few words. I didn't want to fumble them, so they will come straight off the paper. So apologies for that. But I wanted to share a few words about our dad. Husband to our mom, brother to Richard, Henry, son to Sam and Gertrude, cousin, longtime colleague to Richie, someone who meant so much to so many people. Certainly lived a full and impactful life. I think, one that can be measured not only by his tangible accomplishments, but by the impact that he had, the example he set, really enduring legacy that he left with those he touched, and a legacy that we in turn are able to pass on to others. Great many tangible accomplishments. I won't go through the entire resume, but among the highlights, good stint in the Army. Don't think there were any major war stories, but he did seem to keep the world at peace in the late 50s and early 60s, so count that as a win. Once had a job as a soda jerk, which as kids we thought was quite a hilarious occupation. Once upon a time, won $3,000 playing blackjack while visiting his in-laws in Las Vegas. That was very exciting. I know this is being recorded. I'm not completely sure of the tax implications there, but pretty confident those winnings were at least equally offset by losses. So for the record, video, in case any of our friends at the IRS are watching. The somewhat more substantial part of that resume, certainly somewhat more significance than the soda jerking and the big wins in Vegas. I had the very good sense to strike up a relationship in college with our mom, whose studious diligence undoubtedly helped him raise his GPA. The love and the partnership that they shared made for a truly remarkable lifetime together over the past more than 50 years. And I suppose I wouldn't be here had that not happened, nor would my brother or sister. So I guess count us extra big fans of that not insignificant piece of the picture. He did, along with our mom, manage to raise three reasonably confident, charming, very humble children. And as the story goes, set a very solid example as well for his own younger brothers, Richard and Henry, our uncles, growing up in Everett. And he carried on the legacy of Wulf's Fish Market, building and enhancing, growing a business that was admired across the city, really around the world. I'll say it's not an uncommon thing as a Wulf to be asked by people you meet wherever you might be if you're related to Alan, and those folks then proceed to gush and gush and gush some more about what a wonderful, warm, and generous man he was. But as I think about my dad, I think about the things we all learned from him, things to which we all aspire, and that we ourselves strive to pass along to our children and others with whom we interact. I think about the selflessness. He cared so much about others, would absolutely give you everything he had. I know it was not easy or inexpensive to raise our family, but he and our mom made it look easy. I can't recall a thing we ever wanted for. Actually, it might have been pretty cool to have a dog. We did get a guinea pig, but otherwise pretty much everything we ever wanted. And in fairness, Dad was allergic to the dogs, or so he said. He made sure that is it true? I'm not sure. He made sure that above all else, we were on track for the future, ensured we got to college, to grad school, what have you. Took care to make sure we were exposed to the arts and able to travel to gain different perspectives on the world and on other cultures. And although I know his preference was to watch the games on TV, year in and year out, he would bring us to Fenway Park to watch the Red Sox live and in person. But his ethos of selflessness and generosity certainly extended well beyond his immediate family. He was always looking for ways to be helpful, to lift up others. And this is something I think from which we've all learned. And when I think of Dad, I think also of the incredible dedication, the commitment, the drive, the hard work. He would wake up every morning at 4 a.m., maybe 4:15 on a super lazy day. But during the holidays, actually much earlier, he would pour himself a Dixie cup full of orange juice, and he would set off for the city. And that amazing work ethic was always eye-opening. On the occasions we would go into work with him on a Saturday or during a school vacation and see how hard he and Richie would work, shoveling the ice, hauling and cutting fish, working with customers. And the other piece was just the caring way in which he engaged and communicated with and drew in everyone who came into the store, from professors to chefs, from housewives to young professionals to school kids visiting on field trips. How he built such strong bonds with both his team of employees and his loyal customers. How he was so tuned into their families, to their joys, to their sorrows, and I was always just struck by the warmth and the depth of those relationships and the great admiration everyone in Dad's orbit had for him. And that example that he set was truly a gift to us all and to all who came in contact with him, something we would strive to emulate and in turn pass along to our children. And it was pretty clear when his first grandchild, my daughter Jocelyn, visited the store for the first time, got a whiff of the seafood and promptly threw up all over the floor. It's pretty clear that future generations of Wulfs might not be putting their grandfather's life lessons into action in the fish business, but what he taught us certainly transcends fish and is already being passed through those generations and certainly will continue to be. I catch glimpses of it all the time and the things Jocelyn and her sister Charlotte set their minds to doing and dig into tenaciously until the goal is achieved. Sometimes that includes digging into one another, but mostly a force for good. And I think it's fair to say that no one cared more about family than our Dad did. No one delighted more in the annual Labor Day picnics, or the Passover Seders, or the weddings, or the bar mitzvahs, or just in staying abreast of the doings of the multitudes of cousins, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, and others. And in so many ways, Dad was a patriarch of our extended family. And when the grandchildren came, things were definitely taken to an even higher level. Wherever those grandkids might have been over the past 20 years or so, that's where their grandpa was. Frequently that was a ball field or another field for baseball, soccer, field hockey, football, lacrosse, other sporting events, and not always right around town. Sometimes those fields were in DC or in Albany or Providence or wherever. He would get there. I have great memories of a road trip he and I took to New Hampshire just a couple of years ago. He got to see Jocelyn's first collegiate field hockey goal. I know he was excited to be there for that. Just a great memory on many levels. And I know there are similar stories from Nicholas, from Nathaniel, Alexander, Darian, Aiden, and Charlotte. But at the end of the day, I think that's what shines through most about Dad, his commitment to family in all its forms, to building it, to sustaining it, to supporting, encouraging, and nurturing it, whether in his own marriage with our mom, whom we know he loved more than anything and with all of his heart, or his own grandchildren, children, cousins, nieces, nephews, or the community he built around the fish market. He was a family man in the very truest sense of the word. So I know there are many, many, many more stories to be shared, at a time when a larger contingent of those who knew and loved our dad can gather together and can get out from behind these ridiculous masks and celebrate what was truly an amazing life that touched so many people. And I don't think that time will be too far off, so I will stop here, but just say we love you, Dad. You'll be deeply missed, but your legacy will live forever through all the lives that you've touched.
David, that was beautiful. Thank you. Alan and I were practically joined at the hip during our early years. We were roommates until he left for college, and we did everything, or at least it seemed like that, together. We played, explored, climbed trees, rode bikes, shoveled the backyard, the stairs, the sidewalks after snowstorms. It took a long time because the work was frequently interrupted by snowball fights. But what stood out for me and continued to do so throughout his life was the way he watched out for Henry and me. Excuse me. Never in an overbearing way, but with genuine concern for our welfare. Henry fondly tells the story of a time when he was visiting in Boston and stayed with Judy and Alan. He was there for a business meeting. And as Alan prepared to go to bed because he had to get up early to go to the fish market, he said goodnight, and then he said to Henry, "Now, don't stay up too late." We still chuckle about that, even now. In the middle years of our lives, we interacted less frequently because we were both busy with work and family. But when I retired, I stopped in the store and made Alan an offer he readily accepted to help out during the holidays. Even a bumbling surgeon could grind and wrap and store bundles of fish. We both understood that there were two things about this arrangement. One, I might be useful, but more importantly, we'd have a week together every spring and every fall to reminisce, trade stories, catch up on news of each other's children, grandchildren, and the extended family. And we just didn't seem to get to those things when we met at other times or spoke on the phone. That was a true gift for me. At the same time, I had the opportunity to work along Richie and observe the seamless relationship between him and Alan. It was clear he treated Alan as an uncle, a brother, a friend, and a boss all at once. And there's no doubt in my mind he was largely responsible for making it possible for Alan to continue at that store as long as he did. Unlike me, my brother was a rock, steady, supportive, and unyielding. He didn't waver in his relationship with friends and family. He was always there and he was needed, and he gave of himself generously. There were times when his deep-rooted conservative approach frustrated us. Going into the store was a little like entering a time warp. The digital world was a mystery he had no interest in exploring, but he was so grounded in his worldview that one could only shrug and love him for all the wonderful traits which made him such an exceptional man. For Henry and me, he was not only our oldest brother, he was our oldest friend. We will miss him.
Thank you, Richard. Some say that we live in a society where fulfilling our personal needs and desires is seen as our birthright. And some say that Americans pride themselves on being independent thinkers who recoil at being told what to do or what to believe. And if all that is true, then American values might be in conflict with Judaism's central principle of mitzvah, our obligation to live life in service of God according to a set of practices that has been predefined. However, Alan, like many others of his generation, seemed to combine these values in the simple concept of service. While God may not have been the central focus of his service, serving others is certainly the work of the divine. I don't have so much more to add from the stories that David was able to share. Only this sense of, I feel that Alan lived from compelled to serve and care for others through so many of the stories that you shared. Whether it was from service to the country as a dental assistant in the Army, or returning to the pharmacy program at Northeastern University, where, as you mentioned, you met your mother, Judy. Judy shared a little bit more details about that courtship, by the way, that as caring as we will hear, and you can tell about how he was so caring for his customers, had the gift of gab, could engage in depth. He seemed to fail to notice Judy's affections towards him. And so it was after some while that she finally said, "If you can't see that I like you," and she asked him out. Apparently he thought about it, had to consult his buddies, finally convinced him to go on that first date. And while they hit it off on that first date, he almost didn't earn a second date, as Judy gave him an ultimatum: if you don't quit smoking, we're not going to go out again. He quit smoking, and the family before us is history. The sense of service, I think, is exemplified in many other ways. The sense of serving customers, waking up at 4:30 each morning, getting home at 7:30, affectionately being called the fish doctor for the care he put into cutting fish, the care in his customers and their lives. Wulf, as Richard mentioned, was sort of the premier producer of fresh gefilte fish during the holiday seasons. And he kept the recipes that your father or your grandfathers had handed down for generations. The kindergarten children from local schools would come in for lessons on fish in the oceans, and they would reply with drawings that they sent to Alan. Several times Wulf's was featured in Boston Magazine as the best fish market in Boston. He even sold salmon to a priest, and only salmon, who attributed his longevity and life of good health to the salmon that Alan sold him. He may have not have worked as a pharmacist, but fish was his medicine. And the market was his place 6 days a week, and he couldn't have done it without Richie at his side for those 40 years. As much as he was at home in the fish market, that was Alan's way of providing for the family. He certainly sacrificed a lot of time with his children when they were growing up, so that he could provide for what their needs would be, and for Judy's as well. The fish market was both a love and a passion of his, and thank God, because he spent so much time, but it was also a means to an end, providing safety and security for those he loved most, his family. And it sounds to me that family is what mattered most to Alan. He would find ways to hand the keys over to Richie, who would man the store so that the family could take vacations each year. And then when he retired, he was able to take the grandkids on more extended vacations to Cancun and Aruba. Family gatherings were a central piece of family tradition. The Saturday night going out for dinner as a family, Sunday night getting together for dinner. He was proud of his family and happy to talk about them whenever the customers entered the store. I know that as children that the three of you, Lori and David and Andrew, enjoyed going into the fish market. You'd receive little envelopes of pay at the end of the week, and you liked going on errands down the block, whether to deliver mail, etc., and picking up cookies at the local bakery. He loved his extended family, caring for his parents, and oftentimes the highlight of the year was the family seders in Lexington, or the yearly picnic with over 100 people. All that he spent in the store during his children's early years, he was able to spend with his grandkids, as David pointed out, never missing a school event, sporting event, from DC to New Hampshire. He was there and could take it all in with his grandchildren. Judy and Alan hosted sleepovers at their house for the boys and kept a cabinet full of junk food so that they could have fun and look forward to coming over to their house. There's one story that Aidan told about how Grandpa took them to a Red Sox game and was unable to walk with the family and said, "I'll catch up to you." And as they were walking to Fenway Park, they saw a rickshaw passing them, and Alan called out, said hello, as he was taking the rickshaw to the game. In closing, the Talmud says, "A man without a wife dwells without joy, without blessing, and without goodness." And for everything that mattered most to Alan, none of it would have been possible without Judy. Judy was there while he was at the store, raising the kids, doing all the school and sporting events with their 3 children, while he provided for the family, allowing them to pursue their careers, their education, etc. Judy would have 2 dinners, first with the children, and then a second dinner with Alan. And the dinners were no simple dinner. As you told me, Judy, that Alan insisted on having soup, not just at matzo ball soup at Passover once a year, but every single meal required a soup. Soups require often a lot of work and a lot of time to get the flavors out. And so I can just imagine the amount of effort that you put into the meals, not just 1, but 2 meals. You also made him happy by learning and adopting his mother's recipes, clearly choosing to provide the food that he wanted to eat, and making him happy in that way. He tried to show his appreciation for Judy when he had the need to call an ambulance from the fish market. He told, I guess, Richie to not call the ambulance because the ambulance would have gone to the local hospital, and instead the plan was to get to Peabody, which they successfully did. But apparently this is just one example of a certain degree of stubbornness that may have been alluded to by the life philosophy that you said your brother projected. I know that the grandchildren and the children learned so much from Alan. Aiden learned about what it meant to be a caring person. How that Alan refused to drive him to football practice on a not so warm summer day because he only had 1 water bottle, and Alan required he take 3 with him. Nicholas appreciated his harsh honesty, his work ethic, his lessons, as you said, from multiple generations. That work ethic was not only evident in the store, but a job well done had to be performed when it came to the yard work as well, as Andrew can attest to. Alan, I know that you will be missed each and every day, but you will never be forgotten. May you rest in peace. I'll now chant the memorial prayer, first in Hebrew and then in English. את נשמת חיים בן שמו ביינס וחשב שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו אנא בר הרחמים אסתירהו בסתר כנפך לעולמי שמוע קודשו חיים את נשמתו אדוני נחלתו וינוח בשלום ומשכבו Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence. Among the holy and the pure to the soul of Chaim ben Shmuel Bainis Bachashin, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. In these unusual times, the ritual of burial is performed a little bit differently. Still want it, for for those in the family who want to participate, we can each ceremonious take a ceremonial handful of dirt and toss it onto the grave here. The basic idea is that, and it's a little hard to get into the metaphor of burial given that it's already been performed, but the idea of returning someone to the earth is that it's the responsibility of the family and the friends to collectively, if you will, thinking about the earth as a quilt, that each little grain of earth is a stitch in that blanket, and each handful is going to be a quilt, a patch in that quilt. And while the casket has already been covered, I think that the opportunity remains for everyone in the family to add their stitches and their patches to this quilt of eternal comfort that's been laid over the casket. So if anybody in the family would like to participate, I invite you to, one at a time, come forward and cast a handful of earth.
Stone.
You did. I can do it. Sure.
We're getting Kowloon after, Richie. We're getting Kowloon after. Should come. Ciao. Oh, yeah.
The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May all and soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, Adonai, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. And let us say, Amen. The mourner's cottage can be found on the back side of your pamphlet. Together. Yitkada v'yitkadash shemeraba ve'ama divrach chirutei v'yamlich machutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael v'agala u'bizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba Mevarach le'olam olmei Amaya. Yitzarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitrama v'yitnaseh v'yitada v'yitale v'yitala shemei d'kudusha b'richu ve'ela minko berkata v'shirata tushvachata v'nechemata v'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba mishamaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. closing, I want to share the story from the book of Genesis when our patriarch Jacob was advanced in years and near the end of his life. He called his son Joseph and his two grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh, close to him. And he said, Hamalach HaGoel Oti, may the angel who has watched over and redeemed me, Mikol Ra, from all harm, Yivarech et HaNe'arim, bless these lads. And so too may the angel who has watched over Alan throughout his life watch over and bless all of you. This concludes our service.